Hi, I'm Lori.
And I'm Kevin, and this is No Longer Ashamed.
We are survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
And we're here to share with you that if you're a survivor, you don't have to be alone.
Our logo is a salamander, and the reason is a fire salamander can survive a fire, and you have survived a fire.
We want to help you with your journey to healing and hope.
We are all survivors together, and we walk this journey together, and you are not alone.
By telling our stories, we are hoping that you will have the courage to share your stories as well and find your voice.
Because stories are so important, and for so long I know that I wouldn't tell my story, but when I finally shared my story, that's when I got my freedom.
And this is our journey and your journey to healing and hope. So come with us. Well, tonight we want to talk about restoration and the importance of restoration, because I'm highlighting this week because I've had a really rough week.
If we would have done this last week, I think it would have been a different conversation.
I think it would. I was in a car crash and I injured my hand and tore ligaments, had a doctor's note, couldn't go to work,
had a brace on.
Had to wear a wrist brace, which I
Which
hated.
isn't on right now.
No, because I was told to wear it for a week.
Okay.
And that week is done as of today.
So you're not being rebellious. Okay.
No, I followed the doctor's orders.
So here you are.
And, I got a really bad bruise from the...
Yeah, ligament bruises are ugly.
Well, no, I got bruise on my forearm from the airbag.
Oh.
And the brace would rub on that bruise all the time. And I had to wear the brace because my ligaments were killing me. So I couldn't do anything
You couldn't go
that
to
I
work.
wanted to do. I couldn't go to work.
Couldn't ride your bike.
My restoration is, the activities I like to do. And the main one is bike riding. If anyone who knows me would tell you, I'm all about bikes. Anything with pedals. I couldn't do that. And it's been a gorgeous week.
I know,
The
right?
weather's been amazing. And I've been sitting home just pouting and being grumpy. And then my wife had to go to the island to work on the house over there. So I've been sitting home alone with my dog. And we've been
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh you.
bonding because we're, stuck with each other. And, I've been going on a lot of walks. And walks, it's one of my ways of restoring and getting recharged, but it gets boring if that's all you do. But yes, I've learned the importance of restoration this week because I haven't had it available. Not all the ways I normally do. And I realized a lot of the ways I restore are ways that get me completely focused on something else for a while. So, with bike riding, I get into mountain biking. I get into downhill biking. I do road biking. And when you're biking, you're just focused. You're just on two wheels, you're pedaling, you're going for it. Mountain biking is really hardcore, and you're just focused in the moment that whole time. Nothing else is going on.
So it doesn't allow you to think about anything else.
Yeah,
really.
you're just wrapped up in that, but you're also super focused. I really like that. And I think part of my job fulfills that too, because a lot of the time it's a real physical job. I'm really into it. I'm really focused on what I'm doing. I've got a plan. I've got, goals. I'm working on it. So it keeps me driven, and I like being driven. And this week I haven't had a thing to do.
You had some sympathy for the COVID lockdown people.
Yes.
Because you and I have been lucky. We've been essential, so we've been working through this whole thing.
I've been calling it expendables, but same kind of thing. We've been, And so I really didn't have perspective on being locked down, not being able to do anything until this week. And
what did you find yourself, for instance, did you find yourself angry, frustrated, lashing out when you couldn't do what you needed to get your relief? What showed up?
Well, after boredom, I would be frustrated. And then generally that's about as far as I got before Declan, my dog, who's pretty young, he would get also bored.
He's a baby.
And he would drive me nuts, and we'd go for a walk. But I think I was so happy when Charnel came home just because I needed some kind of outlet, because I was going a little out of my mind with all of this, just being alone, and I had all these ideas. Oh, I can do all these things. And you really don't realize how much you need both hands to do anything. I couldn't even fold clothes. I mean,
Right.
I did the dishes once and my hand would get sore. And I'm like, I'm pretty much useless.
Wow.
And I think it was just,
What did it stir in you? When you said useless, that made me kind of think of
I was
shame and
feeling depressed.
Yeah.
Just because, I thought I could, look, I'm going to get paid from the insurance company to stay home. And
Right.
it's like, woohoo, I can stay home and do nothing. And I'm like, no, this isn't working.
Yeah.
It's not what I hoped for. And I'm not like a binge TV watcher. I watched a couple movies and I would get kind of bored with that. And I really, I spent some time in scripture because it was a relief to just focus on something other than myself.
what came up for you in scripture? Did anything ring your bell?
Yeah, I was reading Timothy and I was thinking about, we really take for granted how, we believe we know what we're doing is the right thing all the time. But we don't always check in and pay attention to what Jesus really wants us to do. And I think that was the feeling I got, was like, I don't check in often enough.
It's interesting that you say that because we haven't talked right till today.
No.
And what I think is so valuable is that we have what restores us. We have the things like, for me, was gardening. Now, I live in an apartment.
Yeah.
So for me, that's not an option. People are like, come garden my yard, but that doesn't really work with my schedule. So what for me is I've been making masks because I can. I called my grandma friends. I'm like, give me all your fabric. So I've made masks. That's been what's kept me busy because I'm alone. And when you said, I was so happy when Chardell came home, those of us that are survivors that are alone, it's kind of a different thing because I don't think there's like, oh, poor me, but there's also this element of we're not talking. When you live alone, you don't talk. I mean, we don't think you don't hug. I mean, so for COVID, we're not hugging, but
There's no...
For being single, you don't hug. So when you do get a hug, it's pretty special. And now you don't get a hug anywhere, anyway, anyhow. Even my sister, who would be the one person, she's a school teacher and she has grandchildren and she's not going to get within 6 feet of me.
Yeah.
And so when we think of our way of coping, this has been a real challenge.
Yeah.
So not only COVID, because you and I didn't get isolated from that,
No.
but then you had this car wreck. So suddenly you're isolated and you're having to look at your situation differently.
Well, and part of the real hard part for me was I'm an active person. And
Right.
I tend to
You're
really...
not a type A,
No.
but you're active.
I like to be active. And,
Right.
and when we first talked about doing an episode on restoration, it was because, restoration is necessary. I
Yes.
think we all need it. We need to find what gets us
What
happy,
fills our cup.
what fills us up, what recharges us, especially when I was going through the process of getting therapy, dealing with my issues, finding out, what were the healthy ways of coping. I mean, restoration was the healthy ways of coping. That was how I found relief for the stress that would build up.
And it's how you found your wife.
And it is.
That
yeah,
tickles
actually,
me so much.
Yeah. But without restoration, things just build up.
Right.
And you don't get a relief.
And so what was happening for you? Were you
I was not getting relief. I was walking the dog a lot, and that was helping, but it wasn't. I still had that angst, that just the feeling of I need something else. And today I've taken my brace off. It feels pretty good, and I have hope, but I know I'm not going to be able to do much.
Right. You're not going to go out and do a
I can't
bike
go.
ride.
Yeah, I can't go riding bike.
So
today.
something really interesting to me is that when we so often talk about the differences of men in recovery versus women in recovery, and what I think is really difficult for women, and I coach women in recovery, and what I see so often is because they got into drugs or alcohol and they abandoned their family. So so now they're trying to get help. Now they're trying to focus on themselves, and that feels so wrong. You know, and when I ask them, what do you love? It's like they don't even remember, because number one, the drugs and alcohol. Number two, being a parent and putting everyone first besides themselves, and teaching them that putting yourself first is not selfish but selfful, and that it is okay to do those restorative things. And so I think what's really interesting is for you, you knew what they were, and then you were cut off from doing them.
Well, and I do have other means, and I have to admit there are other things I do that are restorative that aren't active. You know, I love music. I love music a lot. And
when was the last time you laid on the floor? Remember in the old days, you lay on the floor on your back and you listen to an album, not a recorder, but a what do you call it? A turntable.
I still have a turntable, and actually I listened to a lot of loud music this week because I could.
It's
because
it's cathartic. I guess.
It is. And, you know, I wasn't going to bug Charnel with my loud music, but it didn't quite fulfill everything I needed. I just need that physical and the focus. I think it's that focus. That
Say more about focus.
Well, you know,
it's not denial. It's not saying it's not here, but it's being focused on something else.
It's kind of an accomplishing thing. You go out. You know, when I go riding, I know the trails I'm going to, and it's like I know what I'm going to do, and I know how I have done it, and you just go out, and you just once you get going, I don't know how to explain it other than you just get in this groove, and you stay in that groove, and you know when you're doing really good, you know when you're keeping up with your normal pace, or you're doing better, you know, and then there's this fulfillment of just being able to do something well. And fortunately for me, I'm good at biking, and it's something I love doing. So it's something I get, you know, not only do I get the physical need of, you know, exercise, but I'm good at it. And so I can do these things that are really hard, and I enjoy it.
And there's some adrenaline with that, right?
Oh man,
because adrenaline is important.
Oh yeah. I mean, I get this fix, this kind of a fix of, you know, there's certain things I do that every time I do them, they still scare me. They're still, they're hardcore. They're intense. That. And even though I know what's coming up, I still have this apprehension when I'm approaching it. And it's like, okay, and I know I got to do it just a certain way to be able to do it. And it still scares the hell out of me sometimes, but I still get through it. And then afterwards, it's like this euphoria.
Right.
It's just.
So what made you choose mountain bike? What was it about that?
You know, and it coincided with when I started getting therapy. I was living in a place up in Bellingham, and this is after we moved from Seattle. And in Seattle, I rode road bikes a lot, and that was just getting around and also getting exercise. But when we moved to Bellingham, I had some friends that mountain biked, and I thought I'd try it out, and I got hooked immediately, and then immediately had a horrific crash.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know this.
Oh, yeah. I had over 90 stitches in my face.
Where?
And,
I don't even see them.
Here.
Really?
Yeah.
What? 90?
Horrific crash.
And then you did it again?
Oh, yeah. I was hooked immediately.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Just the intensity of it was, I was immediately drawn to it and also up in Bellingham, it was just a beautiful place to go riding, and the trails were amazing.
You know what's interesting to me about that is, as a life coach, so often people think this is my thing, and then they run into a roadblock like that and they give it up. They think this is a sign I'm not supposed to do it. And so I love it that even though that happened, you were like, oh no, and you kept going. I think that's really interesting. Or insane.
I think my ex-wife at the time didn't find it so.
She was your wife at the time?
My wife at the time, she didn't quite get it as much, especially since I came home with a few more stitches after that. And But
for you, it was.
I was totally hooked. I was a total junkie. Yeah. It fulfills me in a way that nothing else quite does. I think it's just a combination of the focus and the exercise and the adrenaline.
For me, for the longest time, time it was horses.
Yeah.
And what
I
happened
see that
was,
completely.
we were out at the Monroe Fairgrounds. So if you're not from here, Monroe Fairgrounds is back to back with the rally cars and the race cars. And the horse I was on, it scared her, which surprised me. It wasn't, she had been doing so good, but I ended up on the ground. I hit bricks.
Oh.
And so I broke ribs or cracked them. And because I had small children and my husband wasn't helpful, and that's not me whining, but he wasn't helpful, I pretty much gave that up because I thought, as a mom, right, I can't put myself at risk. And I think that those are the things that are different, is that, you took a big risk. Your wife didn't like it so much, but you're like, hey, this is my thing. And I remember I had loved gaming, and I had actually the month before won a ribbon on that horse. And it was the first one that I had won, and I loved it. But then when I got hurt, I was like, I couldn't lift my baby. So I realized I can't put myself in that situation. And
the
now,
consequences are too much.
Right. The price was too much. And now as an adult, I do have a friend that he has lots of horses, and I go ride when I can, but the timing doesn't really work out with my job and when he's available. But for me, it was horses. But then I had to make this hard choice of being there for my kids. And then sort of what happens, I think, for women is when you have small children is that you go about taking care of them. And then when they're grown, so for me, I decided I was getting back in radio. So as much as I loved the horses, when I thought about career, it was radio. And I am so happy with my job and my career. But it's that place, like you say, where you can be in nature, you can be quiet, you can just, I think horses can really bring out the you-ness of yourself, where like in radio, and I have a job and I do it.
Well, and with horses, you're bonding with that animal too. And there is that bond.
So the horse that I've been riding, and I haven't ridden her for a while now, is Agnes.
That's a great name.
And I'll tell you what, okay, this is funny to me, but there is a woman who was out at the barn and was watching me ride. I'm not the best rider, but I did learn some things when I was riding early on. And I got to run on Agnes. I got to do drills, and I learned how to sit well on her. Plus, she's a fabulous horse. And I never forget, this woman came to a retreat that I was putting on, and she said, I love to watch you ride. And for me, I felt like I was flopping all over the place, but I was on a horse. And that's something I hope in my future as I retire from radio, that if I could have a horse in a field that I could look at every day would make a difference for me. And so also right now I live in a place where I can see water, and so that's very cathartic for me because I grew up on the beach. And I think that we have, maybe for some of us, we have sort of a circular, like, I will go back to horses, I hope, but I may be too old to really ride, but I won't be too old to be around them, to brush them. And something about, like, with your dog Declan, I love, and I always try to get him to just be in my face gently. But with horses, that it's a sniff thing, and they love to sniff you. And if you can not be worried they're going to bite you, not be afraid of them, it's an important connection.
It's that bonding. That intimacy with them, with the animal that's huge. But
it is. Because it's a trust factor, right?
And there are other ways. Like you brought up the water. I think for both of us, the beach is really important. I have always lived on the coast. Beaches are really important for me. Salt water.
We talked about this earlier. Is it freshwater or saltwater?
I have a brother who lives in freshwater, and
doesn't do it, does it?
No, it doesn't have the same effect for me, and I have no idea where that comes from, except from growing up near a beach and being near the water and just finding solace in the waves and the water and going swimming. When I grew up in the Bay Area, you can actually swim in the water because it wasn't so cold as it is up here. But just being on the beach
and nature. So when I drive to work, in the Northwest, I am driving south. So I look in my rearview mirror and I see Baker. It's
Mount
fabulous.
Baker.
Mount Baker. And then as I'm driving south, what do I see?
Mount Rainier.
I see Mount Rainier.
The mountain.
And if by chance I decide to go east or west,
it's Cascades or the Olympics. We're surrounded.
Right? And there is something about that. And I lived in Boise for a while, Boise, Idaho, because for radio, and I could never get my bearings because there was Bogus Basin. That was just a tiny little mountain. It was a hill, but it was their mountain. So I think there's something too about our roots. And you were in California and you were in Washington, but you were always on the coast.
Always. And I really can't imagine living anywhere. We have some really close friends that moved to Idaho, and where they moved is beautiful. It's amazing. And I love visiting, but I don't think I could live anywhere but where there's coastline.
And so because of having connections on Whidbey Island, we ride the ferry a lot. And I know for so often people are like, how can you deal with the ferry? To me, riding the ferry, even if I stay in my car, there is like a piece of heaven. Because I'm on the water. Yeah. And I can see it. If I stay in my car, if I go up, I can see it. And there is something just so soothing to me about water. And I feel like whatever it is, so sometimes our childhood brings up those memories, right? And so it's dichotomy isn't the word, but there's something that for me, even though I was raised on the beach and that's where my abuse happened, there's still something about the beach and the water that gives me comfort.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a long time, summers were hard because that's when I got abused, and I always associated summers. And then after I learned about that, I kind of became more aware of that. I could identify it, and then summers are not such a hard thing anymore. I look forward to them. I enjoy them. I've gotten past that. I don't have that anxiety anymore. I know. I mean, I look back at my life, and I realized that I had a lot of anxiety about summer, and now it's not an issue, which I'm very grateful for, because summers are some of the best time of the year to go bike riding and go to the beach. But the important thing about restoration, I mean, we need some kind of a place to recover, to restore ourselves, to recharge our batteries, especially when you're first starting to get help, when you're first starting to explore what happened to you, what your issues are, how do you address them. It's so overwhelming. We need to find a place where we can just basically kind of tune out for a while.
Right. So one of the things that I teach as a coach that was very good for me is I always say, find this place where you can go and have your morning 5 minutes, where you can, some people like to read, some people like to pray, some people like to meditate. And for me, we moved a lot when I was raising my family. And so the ultimate place I found, which a lot of people will find a closet or they'll find a landing on their stairs. We had this rocking chair. Unfortunately, if you rock too hard, it tipped back. But I would pull the rocking chair in front of the wood stove, and that was my place. My kids were still in bed, and I had a place. And I had a basket with my books. And so every morning I'd get up, I'd get my coffee, and I had that rocking chair in front of the wood stove. And that was my solace during those times, because, as a mom, there was no extra time. But finding a place, even in your house, in your yard, that can be yours. You can put a picture, you can make it yours, and even though mine was in the middle of where the wood stove was, for that hour in the morning, it was mine. It was my place. And I think if we can find a place that is ours, that we can go and that we can just let it all hang out, we can be who we be, we can read, we can meditate, we can journal, whatever it is that serves us in this time, but that there is a place for us to be, where it's a belonging, actually. And isn't that the thing, that when we're abused, we feel like we don't belong?
That we're outsiders, or, there's something wrong with us.
Right.
So we don't fit in.
Yeah.
Find the place you fit in. I know for me, I accidentally found it in a lot of ways, just because I rode bikes for a while just to get around, and then friends were mountain biking and I thought I'd try it, and then I was hooked. But I have books are a big one for me. I like reading when I can, and for a while I got into all kinds of sci-fi, murder mysteries. I loved certain authors because I can get wrapped up in their characters. With murder mysteries, when an author writes 30 or 40 books with the same characters,
I can
just, you become so familiar with them.
Yes.
And you just kind of dive in, and everything else just goes away.
I love James Patterson for that reason. Not only does he write the series with Bosch, I think he's the Bosch, he also has the Lincoln Lawyer, which is connected to Bosch, but it's kind of an off series. And for me, that that was reading. Now, because I commute, I don't really have a lot of time to read. So it's books on tape and podcasts.
Yeah, audiobooks.
Yeah, and I find so much joy in that. In fact, my sister, she so wants me to read, so she gave me a new book to read, and she saw me looking for it online. She's like, you are not listening to this one. You are reading it. But there is something really for reading.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I think the important thing is I used to feel like I was wasting time, or, if I had other things to do, I wouldn't set aside the time to take for myself. Mm-hmm. And I think we really need to realize that without that time alone, or the time that we spend just on ourselves, we let things build up.
Yeah.
And we let things just kind of take over.
So a client of mine who is recovering alcoholic got her hair done today, and she said, I feel so selfish. Oh. And here's the thing. If we don't refuel our tank, there is an ocean of need. And if we are compassionate, which most of us are, we want to fill that ocean, but we only have a cup. Mm-hmm. So if we don't be self-full and take care of ourselves and meet those needs, then we don't have what we need to offer to others.
Yeah, we're at our own end.
Exactly.
We're at the end of our own rope, so we can't offer anything to anyone else. I get angst, I get pissy, I get grumpy, and I'm not fun to be around. You could ask my wife, she will tell you. And I just need to get out and burn off some stink.
And it's okay.
Here's
your permission slip.
Yes.
Take care of yourself.
You have to find what makes you happy, what gives you that charge. It doesn't matter what it is.
And
really.
Not only have to, want to.
Yeah.
And I think, again, this is the difference between men and women, is that women will sacrifice everything. Not that men don't, but women feel they should. They suffer so hard from should. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, we want to take care of ourselves. And if we have daughters and we don't model this for them, then this continues on.
They will continue. And men, of course, have been always the caregiver, they're taking care of the family. They go out and, they feel like they have to
work so hard, do so much.
Work so hard and do so much. And if they, if they don't find that place that they can get some relief, then they're always going to be just unfulfilled.
And, there's a verse in the Bible that says, be still and know that I am God. And I think so often like this week is what you struggled with. Like, I got to do. Mm-hmm. And so just being was hard, but yet there was some revelations in what you went through.
Yeah, I mean,
this week.
The time I spent reading the Bible were some of my best times this week, because I had to just be still and recognize what God has done and how important God is in my life, and how
and that you're alive after that accident. You totaled your car.
Yeah. And, just be thankful for what we have. Mm-hmm. I mean, this was a rough week, but I'm okay. Mm-hmm. Thank God for airbags.
Right.
And, just remember what is, important, what does matter. Not just be driven crazy by the fact I can't fold my clothes or do the dishes or, just be thankful for the things I can do and that are important.
Which I know this is a whole nother show, but one of the things as a single mom, number one, learning to ask for help was hard. Then learning to accept it. Mm-hmm. And I think whenever you had your arm, whenever we have something that keeps us from being able to do what we need to do, we feel like we're supposed to be able to do everything. We don't want to ask for help. We don't want to accept help. And, really what is so important in recovery is connection. And that may mean asking for help. It may mean saying, I will allow you to help me and I will be gracious.
Yeah. Or even just listen, someone, when you need someone to talk to, sometimes it's hard to actually ask someone, look, I gotta get this off my chest. I gotta talk about this. It's driving me nuts. It feels like a burden, but sometimes you really need to unload on someone.
Right. And sometimes we'll be like, I really need help with this. And we finally, ask, and then we're like, but if you can't, it's no big deal. It's like it feels like we're backtracking. Like we think we need to be all for everyone and everything. And yet, that's such a false thing. And I think that is both men and women. Women feel feel like they have to be the nurturer, the mom. The man feels like they have to be the provider.
Yeah.
And that, when we have these times where we can't,
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
And we just need help of some kind. It's so hard to ask for help sometimes.
So basically, find what works for you, find how you get refilled and replenished, and give yourself permission.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we're going to do this next week, but we are going to talk about, as adults, red flags that we see in children.
Yeah.
And if after listening to this, if you have any thoughts and want to write below, post below, let us know your thoughts on that. But that is an upcoming one that I'm struggling with. And, so many things like, here this week we were going to talk about that. And then you struggled with it, right? And it's not that we go through life unscathed. It's like we do, and we're going to weather storms. We're going to walk through them together. That's what this is about, right?
Yeah. So we got to look out for each other.
Mm-hmm.
We do. And I think that's why we're going to talk about this next topic soon. What the red flags are, what we see, that we have a feeling, you just got this feeling that something is wrong, something is off.
And not dismiss. So there was a person that I had some feelings about, and it was a friend of mine. She had a daughter. She had lots of kids, but she only had her daughter left at home. She'd married him. I had a funny feeling about him, but he looked like my dad, so I dismissed my funny feeling.
Yeah, you just wrote off.
Right, and then later I found out that he had been abusing the daughter. And so, it's like there were some red flags there, but because of my own crap, I justified it instead of saying, I had an intuition, I had a feeling.
Well, and it's hard. We don't want to judge someone, and yet at the same time, someone's got to look out for these kids. Someone's got to spot something that's going wrong. And how do we do that? How do we know? Are we just being judgmental, or do we really see something that's, okay, this shouldn't be happening? This is a red flag. This is something wrong. How do we know when we're actually seeing something that's, really bad?
Yeah. And, before we do this show, it would be so great if you share with us your experiences, if you tell us what you've been through so that we can, talk about this, because we're not the experts.
No.
We're just working through this too.
Yeah.
And,
we're learning as we go.
That's right. And the one thing that I just would love is your input. And I know that's what you want, Kevin, is we want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories. Maybe we'll interview you one day. Maybe you will be on this show. But what we want is what we talked about last week, is we want to offer hope.
Yes.
But we want to have these difficult, uncomfortable, hard conversations. And, if you would have asked Kevin, what do you want to do a podcast about? He would have been voiceover. But, he's doing it about this experience. And it's hard, but it is so good. And what we really want to offer, and why we always do it as the end, is we want it to be for you, is that if you want to join us in prayer, that prayer is such a big part of this. And, if people ask me how I survived, I don't know how I could have survived this without God. And when I was 9, we moved to Whidbey Island, and I accepted Christ because my parents were partiers, but we had a neighbor that had one of those station wagons with the back seat facing backwards. And they also had one of those double bikes. Well, they would come by and they're like, hey, do you want to go to Sunday school? And so they would pick us up every Sunday and take us to Sunday school. And that, I believe, that is what gave me the fortitude to walk through all of this and to have the life that I have today.
Yeah, I know all my life I was looking for God and looking for what God's path was for me. I knew God had a purpose for me. I just didn't know what it was.
And that I love what you say. You didn't know you were welcome.
Yeah, well, I didn't think I was welcome in church because I was such a mess. And I was such a, I had done so many bad things and was still doing so many bad things. And I just thought any church that would want me, I wouldn't go to because,
So that's interesting because you felt like you were bad. I knew that I was unworthy, but I also was the good girl, trying to be so good.
But yeah, it wasn't until I found Christ that I learned that I did matter, that I was worthy, and that not only did he forgive me, but he loved me. And that changed my life. So that's it for today.
We are going to have a prayer time if you want to stick with us. If not, we believe in you.
We want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories.
If you like this podcast, please rate and review, because that's how other people can find us. And we really want to spread this message.
Let's pray for you, Father. I'm just thankful for all the blessings you've given us, especially for this week, for your restoration in our life, because your restoration is the most meaningful in our lives. It's the restoration of knowing that we matter, that we are loved, that we have a place, and that we are part of a family, your family, and that we are loved by you. Father, I just pray for anyone listening that they would feel your peace and your grace in their lives right now, and that they would know that you are blessing them with your love, and that you just want them to come to you and feel your presence in your life, and that they would find that place that they belong in your presence. And Father, I just thank you for giving me the frustration this week so that I would seek you and spend more time with you this week, because that was important to remember, that part of my day-to-day living and part of my busyness keeps me away from you, and that this has been the time that in my frustration I realized that I wasn't paying attention to what mattered, and I thank you for that reminder. And Father, I just pray you would continue to bless the people who are suffering, and pray for your grace in their life and your healing, and that they would know that there is a hope in their lives. And I just thank you for that in your name.
And Father, I am just so grateful for Kevin having an off week, because I think that it's really easy to think that, okay, I'm good now. And Lord, that recovery is a process. And with clients that I have that are recovering alcoholics, and they have to go to meetings and say, I'm so-and-so and I'm an alcoholic. But Lord, I always encourage them to say, I'm so-and-so and I'm in long-term recovery. And Lord, we're all in long-term recovery. This is what it's all about. And we are going to be triggered. We are going to have these times. But Lord, what I love is that we can come together. We're not alone. And that we know by accepting you, by coming to terms with what we've been through, it doesn't mean it's going to be a piece of cake. It's still going to be a struggle, but that you are walking it with us, Lord, and that there are people like us. We want to walk this with people. We want them to know they're not alone, because belonging is what is so important. And if we belong because of what we've been through, then more power, Lord, that, we're willing to share and be vulnerable in what we've gone through, so that other people will know they're not alone. And I thank you for the stories. I thank you for the people that have been walking this journey. And I'm so grateful that we don't have to keep this all a secret anymore in any way. In your Son's name, amen.
Amen.